a story of unexpected love and a secret superpower. Meet Min-jun, a kind but unemployed man with a superhuman secret he's desperately trying to hide. His life changes forever when a viral video of him in action catches the eye of Jin-woo, a quirky and brilliant CEO of a major gaming company. As they navigate a thrilling and dangerous case involving a masked criminal, Min-jun's strength becomes the key to solving a series of kidnappings. Along the way, he finds himself caught in a love triangle with his longtime crush, Tae-ho, a no-nonsense detective. But as their partnership deepens, Min-jun and Jin-woo realize their bond is more than just professional. This is a story of finding purpose, embracing your true self, and discovering that sometimes, the greatest strength isn't just in your hands, but in your heart. Chapter 1. The Inherited Burden. My strength isn't a gift. It's a curse passed down in my family. For generations, the power was a quiet secret, a small flicker of superhuman ability that was manageable and shared. But with me, it was different. I inherited it all, the max power, and in doing so, I drained it from the rest of my family. The curse was mine, and the consequence was theirs. My mother, a tiny and terrifying force of nature, could once tear a phone book in half with one hand, but now struggled to open a jar. My father, who was always normal, was now physically frail. My strength left a trail of fragility in its wake. It was a lesson I learned early. One day, a boy on the playground was bullying my friend. I gave him a light tap on the shoulder to get his attention, and he went flying over the swing set. I spent the rest of my childhood trying to hide it, desperately clinging to a dream of a normal life. I wanted a job, a home, and maybe, just maybe, the attention of my best friend, Tae-ho. Tae-ho was the exact opposite of me. He was calm, focused, and utterly conventional. He became a detective, a hero in my eyes. He was everything I wasn't: steady, strong in a way that didn't break things, and deeply respected. He also had a type, and it was decidedly female. He was currently chasing a girl he'd met at the station, and while my heart ached a little every time he talked about her, I was just happy to be in his orbit. While my life was stuck in neutral, my latest attempt at a job interview ending with a handshake that nearly dislocated a manager's thumb, Tae-ho was dealing with something far more serious. A series of kidnappings had started in our district. Women were vanishing without a trace. It was the talk of the neighborhood, a chilling mystery that even Tae-ho and his team were struggling to solve. My own life was a more chaotic, domestic drama. My mother was constantly trying to get me to use my strength, pulling out broken furniture and asking me to fix it. My father, a meek man who had married a human wrecking ball, just sighed. My family was a mess of loud love and broken objects, a stark contrast to the perfectly ordered life I longed for. Then came the Jin-woo. He wasn't a detective, he was a CEO, a ridiculously rich and wildly eccentric CEO of a major gaming company. He was a man who lived in a glass house, both figuratively and literally. He was the target of escalating threats from an anonymous source. It was clear he needed protection, but he wasn't going to trust a conventional security guard. That's where I came in. The night I got into a fight with a group of thugs in an alley, I didn't think about the security cameras. I just reacted. I sent one of them flying across the street with a flick of my wrist. The video, titled "Unemployed Man Fights Gangsters with One Hand," went viral. The next day, my phone rang. It was Jin-woo. He didn't introduce himself as a CEO or a tech mogul. He just said, "I think we have something in common. You're a problem solver, and I have a big problem." He saw my power not as a flaw but as a solution. For a man who lived in a world of zeros and ones, my strength was the ultimate cheat code. He offered me a job, to be his personal bodyguard. A lifeline, a reason to get out of my parents' chaotic house. It was a job that would put me in the path of a man who saw me as an asset, and on a collision course with a mystery only my crush could solve. My two worlds were about to collide, and I had a feeling my life was about to get a lot more complicated. Chapter 2. The Chaos of a Bodyguard. My first week as Jin-woo's bodyguard was a blur of absurd scenarios and ridiculous requests. It was nothing like a movie. There were no car chases or daring rescues. Instead, my days were spent navigating the strange whims of a boss who treated my superhuman strength like a new video game feature to be tested. He'd accidentally drop a tray of coffees from a dizzying height just to watch me catch them all. He'd open a heavy, bolted door and grin as I effortlessly wrenched it off its hinges. He even tried to convince me to use my strength to beat a notoriously difficult level on one of his games, arguing it would be a valuable training exercise. My initial frustration began to soften into a reluctant amusement. Jin-woo wasn't cruel. He was a brilliant, lonely man who had found a new, fascinating toy. The real fun started when Tae-ho came into the picture. He called to ask if I wanted to meet up, a simple invitation that sent a ridiculous flutter through my chest. Jin-woo, who was never far away, must have noticed my face. "Your friend?" he asked, a playful note in his voice. "He's a handsome one. Are you going on a date?" My face instantly went red. "No. He's a busy man. A detective. The lead on that kidnapping case." Jin-woo's smile faltered, replaced by a look that was part curiosity, part something else I couldn't quite decipher. "Ah, a detective. The kind you wanted to be." He paused. "Does he know about your unique talents?" "No," I said a little too quickly. "No one does besides my family." I felt a pang of guilt. I had always admired Tae-ho so much, but with Jin-woo, I didn't feel the need to hide. It was a strange contradiction. The chaotic family I was so desperately trying to hide became a part of the job. One evening, my mother called Jin-woo's phone directly, having gotten his number from my sister. "Min-jun, why haven't you returned home yet? Come help your father move the sofa." Jin-woo just laughed and handed me the keys. "I'll drive you." When we pulled up to my tiny, cluttered house, he looked a little bewildered. My mother, a tiny powerhouse with a voice that could crack glass, immediately greeted him with a suspicious glare. "You're the man who stole my son's time?" Jin-woo, utterly charmed, replied, "I'm the man who pays him well for his time, ma'am." The next 30 minutes were a blur of my mother arguing with my father about the sofa's new location, my sister demanding Jin-woo's autograph for her friends, and Jin-woo himself, sitting on a wobbly chair, watching the entire scene with an amused grin. He wasn't bothered by the chaos. He seemed to find it endearing. "You've never seen anything like this, have you?" I asked him later when we were finally alone. "My family is organized chaos," he said, a quiet sadness in his voice. "We have meetings, not dinner. This is better." In that moment, Min-jun's world felt like a home to him, not just an interesting anomaly. He saw past my strength, past my clumsy life, and saw something he genuinely liked. I realized that my own feelings were getting complicated. My crush on Tae-ho was a comfortable, familiar dream, but my reality was starting to be all about Jin-woo. Chapter 3. The Unspoken Confession. My chaotic, endearing family life had always felt separate from my new job. But the murderer changed that. The police released a sketch of the culprit, a terrifying, gaunt figure. A shiver ran down my spine when I saw it on the news. I had a feeling I'd seen him before. When I showed it to Jin-woo, his face went pale. He recognized the man from one of the veiled, anonymous threats he'd received. The case that belonged to Tae-ho was now our case, a chilling reality that pushed us closer. We were no longer just a weird boss and his unusual bodyguard. We were a team chasing a monster. Jin-woo, with all his tech and resources, was the perfect partner. We spent long nights poring over security footage and tracking digital footprints. He'd hand me a coffee and a snack, a small, quiet act of care that felt bigger than any grand gesture. One night, as we worked, he looked up from his computer. "Are you scared, Min-jun?" he asked, his voice soft. I hesitated. "I'm not scared of getting hurt. I'm scared I'm not strong enough to stop him." He reached over and gently took my hand, his touch surprisingly firm. "You're strong enough. I've seen it. Just don't be a hero. Let me worry too." That was the moment I started to truly fall for him. The man who seemed untouchable was showing me his fears and asking to share mine. Later that week, I was meeting Tae-ho for lunch. He was talking about the case, a cold and calculated analysis of the suspect's movements. I nodded along, but my mind was on Jin-woo, on the way he'd been texting me all morning. When Tae-ho looked at me, a flicker of understanding crossed his face. He saw me not just as his friend, but as a person with a full heart. He looked past my half-hearted answers and saw the unspoken conversation happening in my eyes. "You're not in this alone, Min-jun," he said quietly, his voice gentle. "He cares about you. I can see it. Be careful. Okay?" His voice wasn't accusing. It was a soft acceptance, a quiet understanding of what had changed. In that single moment, the years of pining were gone, replaced by a deep and abiding friendship. The climax came the next night. The murderer, knowing we were closing in, lured us to a warehouse. It was a trap, of course, a final, desperate act. He came at us with a knife, his face twisted with rage. Jin-woo, who was never meant for a fight, was caught off guard. I saw the glint of the blade, and a rush of pure terror and adrenaline surged through me. My power, for once, wasn't a clumsy burden. It was a tool, a purpose. I threw myself between them, catching his arm, my strength finally unleashed without reservation. I disarmed him, the knife clattering to the floor. As the police sirens grew closer, the villain escaped. But he was no longer the threat. In my panicked, terrified state, all I could focus on was Jin-woo, who was leaning against a wall, his face pale with shock. I was a mess, my heart racing, but he was safe. I ran to him, my hands instinctively going to his face, checking him for a wound. He looked at me, his eyes full of a mixture of fear, relief, and something more. He brought his hands up to my face, his thumbs gently brushing my cheeks. "Min-jun," he whispered, his voice trembling. "You saved me." I couldn't speak. In the adrenaline-fueled haze, all I could do was lean in. And he met me. The kiss was not a slow, gentle thing. It was a fierce, desperate, and overwhelming act. Tasted of fear and relief and a powerful, raw emotion that I couldn't name. As his lips met mine, a powerful surge of feeling washed over me. It was everything I had ever wanted, but also everything I didn't know how to handle. When we broke apart, the air between us crackled with a confusing mix of relief and a terrifying new reality. My heart pounded in my ears. The world was spinning. What was this? Was it love? Or was it just the adrenaline? My mind was a whirlwind of questions I was too scared to answer. Chapter 4. After the kiss, the world was no longer in black and white. It was a kaleidoscope of confusing, vibrant emotions I didn't know how to name. I went home that night, but I didn't sleep. I just replayed every second, trying to understand what it meant. Was it just the adrenaline? Or was it something more? The morning after, I went to Jin-woo's apartment. He was calm, quiet, and didn't try to force a conversation. He simply handed me a cup of coffee and sat next to me on the couch. There was no awkwardness, just a quiet, reassuring presence that felt more real than anything else. In that moment, the questions melted away. I didn't need to understand. I just needed to be with him. Our quiet moment was interrupted by a call from Tae-ho. He had found something. We met at the police station, where Tae-ho showed us surveillance footage from a bus terminal. It was a video of the final victim, not dead, but getting on a bus to escape the city, unharmed. The masked murderer had been lying. He hadn't killed her. He had just wanted to make me think I did, to cripple my mind with guilt and take away the very power he feared. It was his final, twisted attack. "He just wanted to see you fall," Tae-ho said, his voice laced with disgust. "He knew he couldn't beat you, so he tried to break you from the inside." Tae-ho then showed us a video of the villain's final hideout, a place only he could have discovered. The murderer was there, having been captured by a patrol officer who happened to stumble upon him. Tae-ho, as the lead detective on the case, was the one who would get all the credit for the arrest and finding the missing victims. He was going to be a hero. He looked at me and then at Jin-woo, a slight, knowing smile on his face. He was giving me my anonymity back. He knew I had my own life, my own path now, and he had his. Our friendship was stronger than ever. With the case officially closed and the last threat gone, the world felt still. The whirlwind of chaos and violence was over. I went to Jin-woo's apartment, my heart feeling lighter than it had in months. It was just us. We didn't talk about the murderer or the bomb. We talked about us. "Min-jun," he began, his voice barely a whisper. "What was that last night?" Was it real? I looked at him, at the person who had seen all my flaws and still wanted to be with me. I didn't need to think. My hand went to his cheek, a gentle, confirming touch. It was real, I said. It's all real. He leaned in, and this time the kiss was a slow, deliberate promise. I could feel his heart beating against my chest, a steady rhythm that matched my own. My arms went around his waist, pulling him closer, my hands finding his back, feeling the strength of his body, the comfort of his embrace. He tasted of the tea he was drinking earlier, and the scent of his cologne filled my senses, grounding me. It wasn't just a kiss. It was an affirmation. His hands ran down my back, pulling me into his body, leaving no space between us. I could feel the rise and fall of his chest, the warmth of his skin against mine, the vulnerability I had always carried, the fear of my own strength, seemed to dissolve in his arms. He was no longer just the person I was hired to protect. He was the person who protected my heart. He was my sanctuary. His lips moved to my jaw, and then to my ear, his breath a warm whisper against my skin. The world faded away until there was only the two of us. He kissed me again, deeper this time, a quiet groan escaping his lips as he held me tighter. The feelings that had been a confusing mix of adrenaline and affection were now simple, pure love. He gently, but firmly, led me to the bed. I didn't resist. His hands moved slowly, deliberately, his touch full of a tenderness that was both new and familiar. The case was closed, the final threat was gone, and the only thing left was the person in front of me. As the last of our clothing fell away, a final, unsaid promise passed between us. I had spent my whole life hiding, but with him, I was finally found.